The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our growing family of broadcast affiliates. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. Tonight, we have a very special 2-hour program with one of the most provocative thinkers of our time, my good friend Howard Bloom. And Howard and I were talking before we went on air. We've been chatting with each other for over 25 years now. My God. Howard has been called the Einstein, Darwin, Newton, and Freud of the 21st century. And his latest book, The Case of the Sexual Cosmos, Everything You Know About Nature is Wrong. And it's nothing short of revolutionary. Now, in this groundbreaking work, Howard argues that sex, my favorite topic, flamboyance, and what many dismiss as waste are actually the creative engines of the evolution. Not sure how he got there, but we're going to ask him. Just on Earth, that is, but woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. Joining me now from someplace in New York City after walking 8 miles and 3,000 push-ups is my good friend, Howard Bloom. And Howard, as always, great seeing you, my friend.
Rob, it's wonderful to see you.
First of all, congratulations on your new book.
Thanks.
But when I got the sheet with the information and I read, let's see here, The Case of the Sexual Cosmos, I said, no, that must be a typo. That's not the way my friend Howard Bloom talks. But congratulations, Howard. As always, you're a stellar author, and you certainly are the most provocative thinker of our times. What inspired you to write your book, The Case of the Sexual Cosmos?
Well, one day I was having lunch. I don't usually do this with an editor, a very, very well-known editor.
Mm-hmm.
And he had me tossing ideas at him. And I suddenly realized that the cosmos is breaking some of the primary laws that we think she follows. She is materialist, consumerist, wasteful, and full of vain display. And I proposed the case of the consumer's cosmos to this editor.
Right.
He didn't accept any of my ideas and is mad at me because I didn't bring him the case of the sexual cosmos, Everything You Know About Nature is Wrong, which started at that lunch table with him. A few months later, I got a call to do a lecture at a college in New Paltz. And I suddenly realized sex was more important than materialism. The cosmos is sexual. It's had sex for anywhere from 1 billion to 2 billion years, which is roughly a sixth of its entire lifetime. And sex breaks every one of the rules that are sacred to science today, meaning those rules must be wrong. And remember, I told you when I was a child, when I was 10 years old, and I was a lost kid, and my parents didn't want to have anything to do with me, and other kids didn't want to have anything to do with me, a book appeared in my lap, and it said the first 2 laws of science are these: the truth at any price, including the price of your life. And it gave the example of Galileo, and look at things right under your nose as if you've never seen them before, and then proceed from there. And it gave the example of Anton von Leeuwenhoek, the man who invented the microscope. Well, suddenly I was confronted with the possibility of looking at everything that's under science's nose and overturning it because it was so obviously wrong. And it was sex, among other things, that proved how wrong it was.
So how many years has the cosmos been around?
13.73 billion years old.
And it still doesn't need Viagra?
got to tell you, backstage before we started, Rob was cracking me up over and over and over again.
I was telling the audience that you and I have known each other for over 25 years now.
Yep. I was sick in a bed for 15 years, and you helped rescue me.
Oh, God bless you.
Because I was in isolation, and I desperately needed the conversations that we began way back then. So you helped me out of that illness.
And I would do it again in a heartbeat.
I don't know how many heartbeats we've got left. I have to look. It took me 14 years to write this book. I have 2 more books I have to write. They take a minimum of 5 years each. I am now 82. Do the arithmetic. I got to be around somehow until I'm 92. We'll see how that works out.
So by the time you're 92, you'll be walking 15 miles a day. Fascinating title. Why the provocative title, though? You know, like this seems to be out of character for the Howard Bloom that I've known for all these years.
Oh, well, it's really very, very, very in character because I have been a contrarian the entire time you've known me. I've been a contrarian since I was a child. I discovered how contrary I was when I was at a John Mellencamp concert with an all-access pass, so I could go anywhere I wanted. And I decided to go into the first 15 rows where the kids were all on their feet and singing along with every single lyric and clapping when they were asked to. And John asked the audience to clap. So I clapped along with everybody else because I wanted to feel the total experience they were feeling.
Right.
And I suddenly noticed something. Rob, when they had their hands apart,
Right.
my hands were together. And when my hands were apart, their hands were together. So it seems that I've been stuck with marching to a different drummer.
Well, thank God you did, because you've brought a lot of very interesting questions to the masses around the world over the years you've been around, and your books certainly have been awe-inspiring and shocking at the same time. So for this book, you know, The Case for Sexual Cosmos, did you have to do a lot of research?
Oh my God, Rob. There are over 7,000 references in the endnotes. A lot of research is a vast understatement. When I do a book, because I'm making seemingly outrageous claims, I have to pin them down with absolute precision. If it takes me 5 studies or 10 studies to clarify or to validate a point, I will do those. I will go through those 10 pieces of research. And often I doubt myself after I've finished writing something or while I'm writing something, and I go back and I recheck every third of a sentence. I research because the claims are so outrageous that I don't believe them when I'm rereading the book, and I need to go back and check another time. So I check over and over again. And every passage you read in this book, I've been over 150 times, and that is not an exaggeration. And the result is, I mean, okay, we got all these quotes. Harvard's Ellen Langer calls the book forceful and fascinating. The Conrad Lavandera of the Smithsonian calls it compelling. MacArthur Genius Award-winning God of Avant-Garde Theater Richard Foreman calls it a massive achievement, a gigantic achievement. Wow. The BBC's James Burke, whose work you may know, he produced and starred in 7 different science series for the BBC, including Connections, which was one of those mind-shattering things you've ever seen on TV. He said, wait, where is he down here? It's a triumph. And the British Interplanetary Society's Gregory Matloff calls it a masterwork. The Applied Evolutionary Society's co-founder, Nanda Pelusi, says Bloom's writing is like getting tickled by a goddess, invigorating and all-consuming. And author Helen Zuman says, this is a very important quote. She's not as well known as the others, but Bloom's efforts to pull us humans out of Greta Thunberg's and others' joy-free self-hate machine is that she admires my efforts to do that. And she says the true tragedy according to the case of the sexual cosmos, is not war or climate catastrophe. It's rejecting the exuberant flamboyance of exactly who we are. So, I mean, there are lots of other quotes on the book, and they're stunning. They're absolutely stunning.
Howard, you said everything you know about nature is wrong. What's the central myth that you're trying to correct?
There are two of them. One is the second law of thermodynamics. You have to believe in the second law of thermodynamics in order to get into the small circle of scientists. If you doubt that law, you are not a scientist. You are tossed out. The second law of thermodynamics, this book argues, is absolutely wrong. And I can tell you why in a minute. The second problem in science is it has another implicit law that everybody ascribes to, and it's called the law of least effort. Nature takes the shortest path between 2 points. Nature always takes the shortest path between 2 points. Well, guess what? Sex is the longest path between 2 points this cosmos has literally ever conceived. If you look at it on the molecular level, it's stunning, astonishing, and impossible to memorize. If you look at it on the cellular level, it's stunning, impossible, and difficult to memorize. If you look at it on the level of us full-fledged organisms, you and me, just the process from the time that you came to sexual ripeness at the age of 12 to find a mate, and then once you find one, to hold on to your mate, to hold on to the relationship, is astonishingly difficult, amazingly difficult. So difficult that it's the subject of romance novel after romance novel. Thousands and thousands of romance novels are really chronicling just how complicated and difficult sex is. Now, why would the cosmos bother? I mean, why bother when you simply you don't need to find Laura. You could simply cut your divide in half if you were just reproducing, but you aren't just reproducing. Nature wants you and Laura to produce unique individuals of a kind that have never been before.
No, we've done that 6 times.
And you know, when your baby comes out, it's not like you. And it has its own personality. It has its own, the things it cries about are very different from the things your previous baby cried about.
Not true. Howard, you and I are going to have to take our first break, so please stand by, my good friend. And by the way, Howard, do you know what the greatest cause of divorce is?
No. Tell me.
Marriage. Howard Bloom is my special guest, Exxon Nation, www.howardbloom.net. And Howard and I will be back on the other side of this break as the Exxon continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, right here on the Exxon Broadcast Network. Don't go away.
In the twilight's hush, where shadows whisper low, lights the light, a voice from the north where whispers are bold, stories untold in the echoes of old.
And welcome back, everyone. Howard Bloom is our special guest, howardbloom.net. We're talking about Howard's new book entitled The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. Kind of sounds dirty.
Well, you know,
has Donald Trump bought a copy yet?
No, I don't think he has.
I'll have to work on that for you. Good talking to you, my friend. Was there a single moment or a discovery that convinced you that this is going to be challenging the mainstream science? And how did you feel about that?
Well, I realized, look, when I was 12, I started a timeline of the cosmos. And I added into it everything we know in history and art and psychology and all the rest. I pulled it all together in one big picture. It took me many, many decades to complete it. It's not complete. You know, there's always more room to grow in that timeline. But The second law of thermodynamics, which is absolutely holy in science, says that all things are constantly falling apart. The probability of just being a random soup is very, very high. There are gazillions of ways to be a random soup, but to be a human like you or me, sorry, the odds are extremely low. And it says there's the concept of heat death in 1850. William Thomson in England, who would later be renamed Lord Kelvin by Queen Victoria. So William Thomson was a young man, and it was all the rage to study steam engines if you were in natural history at the time, which today is named science. And he said 80% of the energy in a steam engine is lost in exhaust, lost in friction. And then in the same paper, he applied this new idea of his that, first of all, heat is the motion of particles, and those particles are always going to tend toward their most likely state. And you and I are very unlikely states. He applied that to the whole world. And he said, long ago, the Earth was uninhabitable by humans, and in the future, it'll be uninhabitable by humans. And one of his colleagues at his university 2 years later came up with the name heat death for this. The whole universe is someday going to collapse into a random soup. And then 10 years later, somebody with whom he was bouncing papers back and forth in Berlin came up with a name for this constant breakdown of the universe. And he called it entropy. And 10 years later, he finally came up with the two basic axioms, the two theorems of what they called thermodynamics, he and William Thomson. And the first law was that matter and energy in the universe is a constant. And the second law was all things in this universe tend toward a maximum of entropy. Entropy is falling apart. Entropy is heat death. Well, look at this cosmos. It started in a big bang, and it went from a nothing to a spreading sheet of space and time moving at a speed that is beyond belief, like a giant's handkerchief. That is not falling apart. Then it coalesced the way that raindrops precipitate in a storm cloud. It precipitated the very first things, quarks and leptons. That is not falling apart. That's not falling down. That's falling up. So I don't have this analogy in the case of the sexual cosmos. It'll have to come in my next book. But imagine that you put a slinky at the top of a staircase.
Okay.
You shove it over just a little bit, and what does it do? It goes all the way down, making this distinct, wonderful noise that metal slinkies have, all the way down to the bottom. Now, try it again, but this time, video it with your iPhone. And then when you're finished, when it reaches the bottom of the stairs, run the video in reverse. It's the video, the slinky going down the staircase is the second law of thermodynamics. All things are falling into uselessness. But the slinky going up the staircase is what most resembles what this cosmos does. Just watch. It goes from those very first things to protons and neutrons. It goes from protons and neutrons to a vast plasma that rings like a gong. It has pressure waves going across it like music. In fact, I think they pinned it a G minor or something like that. Then it precipitates the first atoms. Then it precipitates the first gatherings of atoms in massive swirls. Those are galaxies. And then it precipitates the first stars and the first planets and the first moons. Do you see a slinky going down a staircase? I see a slinky going up, step by step by step, going up. So the universe as we know it does the very opposite of what the second law of thermodynamics says, which means that the second law of thermodynamics may hold in certain limited contexts, but it does not in any way resemble this universe.
I find it very fascinating that the cosmos started with a big bang, and the name of your book is The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. So I just thought I'd bring that to your attention.
The Big Bang. I had never, oh, Rob, you crack me up. I never would have thought that in a million years.
Well, you're not me, my friend, and just thank God you're not.
Yes, well, it's amazing. So that's the second law. And then there's the other law, which is the law of least effort, that things always take in nature, things always take the shortest path between 2 points,
Mhm.
meaning nature is thrifty, nature is parsimonious, nature is a pinch penny. And that view underlies Greta Thunberg's screwed up view of the world. Her, what did my friend Helen Zuman call it? Her joy-free self-hate machine. But that doesn't resemble nature. Nature is not just frugal. Sometimes she's frugal, but sometimes she's utterly flamboyant. I mean, just look at orchard bees. To court, orchard bee females are extremely picky, and they put their males through the most absurd challenges, the most ornate, not the shortest path, the longest path challenges they can find. So
I can associate with that. Go on.
yes, we both can.
Mhm.
So, so if you're a euglossine bee, you would have to go to 6 different, complex, radically different sources in order to find the elements of the perfume that your female wants from you. And then you have to mix it just right. And you cover yourself with it and you go to visit her and to offer her some of it. And if you're off in any way in this magical, mystical art of making perfume, sorry, you're just not going to make it with a female.
Picky, picky, picky.
Yeah. I mean, look at the flamboyance that Darwin saw, Charles Darwin, in a peacock's tail. How utterly flamboyant it is.
Yeah.
It's amazing to look at, and that's what it's designed for, to amaze females. But it means that you putting up a big billboard saying, fresh meat, eat meat, poultry. And then when a predator comes at you, you've got this great big, huge, long tail, and you can't run very well, and you can't fly very well.
I don't know, Howard. You're taking me down a path. That big billboard, eat meat. And what's the name of
Yeah.
your book again? The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. Howard,
So,
you're doing it to me again.
well, I propose replacing the second law of thermodynamics with the first law of flamboyance. That Big Bang was
Mhm.
flamboyant to the nth degree. So was the evolution of protons, stars, planets, and moons. All of that is utter flamboyance, and it all, raises the middle finger
Mhm.
to, it says, screw you, to the second law of thermodynamics.
Howard, how do you see sex, not survival alone, as the key driver to complexity in nature?
Well, you take your 6 kids. Each of them is
Why don't you
different.
take them? Christmas is coming. Please take them.
But just think about them for a minute. They are all very different.
Oh,
Nature is a search engine. It's a search engine of probability and possibility. And it's constantly probing what it could do next. It's constantly probing the realm of the impossible to bring some of that impossibility into the everyday of life, the way Steve Jobs brought us the iPhone in 2007. And nature is gambling, is carrying out this crazy process of sex, too complex for anybody with an IQ of 175 to keep all the details in mind. And it does this because it's constantly using us as fingers, as antennae, probing into the realm of the impossible, trying to make something that never was happen. And
Isn't that called evolution?
yes, that is called evolution.
Mm.
And evolution becomes a lot more rapid. I mean, evolution started with the Big Bang.
Yeah.
It doesn't require life for evolution to occur. But evolution got on the fast track once nature invented life. And there's this peculiar property of life that nobody seems to know. It is nature loves those who oppose her most. Nature loves those who are able to get above her, who are able to do impossible things. And your kids are there in their variety to help nature, to help the cosmos punch open the envelope of possibility.
Fascinating stuff, Howard. Fascinating.
So
You're
you know, I did my field work,
Yeah.
20 years of it, in a field I didn't understand, I knew nothing about, called popular culture. And I ended up, and this was field work, just like Margaret Mead's field work was going to Samoa and becoming such a good Samoan, just imbibing what it meant to be Samoan in every cell of her body. And she became such a good Samoan that she was named a tribal chief, even though women and foreigners were not allowed to be tribal chiefs.
Howard, stand by. We've got to take our break. In Exonation, Howard Bloom is our special guest, www.howardbloom.net. And we're talking to Howard this hour and the next hour about his new book. Fascinating book. I love the title, The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. It all started with the Big Bang. Oh, God, I've got to let that go. Howard and I return on the other side of this break. Don't go away. You're listening to the X Zone on the X Zone Broadcast Network and around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, and of course on your hometown radio, 1220 CFAJ AM. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Oh, but still I rise through the pain, through the tears in my eyes.
And welcome back, everyone. Howard Bloom is our special guest, www.howardbloom.net. And Howard, fascinating book, fascinating title. I can only imagine how hard the research was to do on this book, since you're basically developing a new science.
Well, the research is there, and I did it the old-fashioned way, the hard way. I Googled it. That's an ancient technology by now.
Google.
I used Google Scholar. But then, in the last 2 years of this 14-year process of writing the book, a miracle happened. AI appeared. And there is an AI specifically for people in science and called Consensus. And using it saved me so much time. It was absolutely ridiculous. What had taken a month now took a day.
What do you think about AI?
I love it.
Yeah.
I adore it. I can't live without it. I mean, the AI you heard me talking to before when I was asking Alexa to turn on my appliances is primitive compared to things like ChatGPT 5. And in fact, what's happening is, you know, there's a Howard Bloom Institute. It's been around for 5 years. The goal of the Howard Bloom Institute is to keep my way of thought, this very peculiar way of thought that has me with my hands out when everybody's hands are clasped together, that kind of thought, to keep that alive after I'm gone. So the chief technology officer of the Howard Bloom Institute is building, in fact, he's built 5 versions of it so far, the Bloombot. And the Bloombot is there to keep me alive after I die. And so I'm going on stage probably in November, I think, for the very first time. An author has a brainstorming session with the AI designed to replace him when he croaks.
Wow.
And the difficulty is the Bloombot and I do not agree. We have profound disagreements because it's not quite up to being me yet.
I was watching CNN the other day, and they had 2 authors on of a book, and I just can't remember the title of the book now. But they are heavily involved in AI. In fact, they were contributors to Chat GPT or whatever it is, and they were saying that if we don't shut off AI simultaneously around the world in 20 years, AI is going to start working on the extinction of humans.
Well, that's a stupid idea, and it's
I
a
thought
very
it was.
popular idea. And there's a guy that I met when I first met him. It was 2005. I saw him speak, and he said, "When I got out of college, I asked myself what three things would make the greatest difference to humanity in my lifetime."
Mhm.
And his answers were the internet, alternative energy, and space. But the way he said it, I have this star making thing that goes off in my gut when I see a superstar, an unknown person like Prince or like Shaka Khan, or even Joan Jett, whose career seemed to be over. And that star making thing in my gut went off when I saw this guy. And it said that this guy is not just a superstar. He is what you've been looking for all your life. He's a mythological figure. And kids will be following his example 115 years from now. And my gut was very precise about its arithmetic with that 115-year figure. At that point, he'd gone into the internet and he'd made $1 billion. Then he'd skipped over the thing number two that would make the greatest difference to humankind, alternative energy, and he'd gone directly to item number three on his list to space. But at that point, he hadn't even put a firecracker in a tin can and launched it. He'd launched nothing. And he was the butt of jokes from companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. They just sneered at him. His name was Elon Musk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And Elon Musk has followed nature's imperative to the nth degree. Nature gives you 6 different kids in the hope that one of them or two of them will poke open the envelope of possibility just a little bit. Well, Elon has done more than poke it, he's smashed it. Right now, we don't tend to realize this, but Elon is doing 3 flights a week, and he's on his way to 4 flights a week. He's done 4 flights 5 times so far. He's had over 500 launches of his Falcon 9. He has had a successful launch of his Starship. Now we'll see if the next one is successful. He is punching open the envelope of possibility in absolutely impossible ways. And that's what we humans are here to do. So I spent my 20 years of my time doing this field work in a field that was foreign to me, popular culture. And I worked with people like Michael Jackson. And why was Michael Jackson? There were many. Michael Jackson is the closest to an angel on earth that I've ever met in my life. He was absolutely a remarkable person. He expanded my boundaries of possibility, my sense of what was possible. And Michael Jackson did the moonwalk.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
did that make us gape? It was impossible. When Michael was putting together the Victory Tour, the tour I worked on, Michael used to get awe, wonder, and surprise from everything he saw. Remember the second law of science: look at things right under your nose as if you've never seen them before, and then proceed from there. That's the law of awe, wonder, and surprise. And Michael got that from everything. I probably told you the story a long time ago. I was with Michael's brothers at Marlon Jackson's pool house, which is a little 2-room building. It has 1 room on the first floor and another room on the second floor. And in the center of the room is a big pool table. And they and I were looking at their merchandising, and I was lecturing them on how they tried to do the impossible every time. So they had to have merchandise that was up to that quality. And suddenly I heard the screen door open. And I knew that Michael was supposed to come to this meeting. And I did something I'd never done in my life before. I walked over to the screen door. I looked at the person who was coming through it. I put out my hand. I said, "Hi, I'm Howard." And he said, "Hi, I'm Michael." And I said, "I've got a press release and I need to get your approval on it." So he said, "Okay, let's go up to the room on the second floor." We went up the little tiny stairs, And the room on the second floor was heaped to the ceiling with amplifiers, keyboards, musical equipment. So he found a space on one amplifier, and I found a space on the other amplifier, and I started to read him this press release. Now, Rob, you have to realize that I was considered the person who would be the next great poet to come out of NYU, and I edited the literary magazine at NYU. I took my writing as seriously as I take my science. So I read Michael the press release, and with every sentence, I saw Michael slumping a little bit on the amplifier, and then slumping more, and then slumping more. And when I finished the whole thing, he said, "Wow, did you write that?" Well, of course I had written it, but what Michael was seeing was all the layers of things that I had weaned myself on in order to learn to write. Well, as one of these critics of this book, this case of the sexual cosmos, says, it's like being tickled by a goddess. Michael got that. No one else in my life has ever gotten that the way he got it. Then we went downstairs because we had a meeting with the art director from CBS. And she came and she laid out 5 gorgeous portfolios on the table. They were from the gods of the world of illustration and design. And she shoved one of the portfolios over to our side of the table. Michael and I were standing side by side. His left shoulder was up against my right shoulder. His left elbow was up against my right elbow. His left knee was up against my right knee. And the brothers were crowded around us, crowding us together. And Michael started to open the first portfolio, and he saw the first square inch of the first picture. And he went, "Oh," and his knees began to buckle. And he lifted it a little bit more, and he said, "Oh," and his knees buckled more. And then he opened it further, and again, "Oh," and his knees buckled even a little bit further. Michael was having an aesthetic orgasm. What is the second rule of science? Look at things right under your nose as if you have never seen them before. So Michael saw more in this picture than the artist himself had ever seen. It was astonishing. So Michael felt that because he'd been given this gift by God, it was his obligation to give this gift to his kids. So when he went looking for people to hire for the tour, he tried to find people who could do impossible things, especially magicians who could pull off impossible things. And he kept the whole process of designing this tour top secret. Everybody involved had to sign an NDA. Why? Because he wanted his kids to be so awed and so astonished when they saw this show that they would achieve the same degree of amazement that he achieved, often on a daily basis. Michael was one of those fingers of the cosmos, the search engine poking into the realm of the impossible to find what can be hauled into the realm of the everyday. How many people do the moonwalk today? Thousands. Thousands of performers all over the world. In Moscow, Beijing, San Francisco, all over the place are doing the moonwalk today. Michael hauled the impossible into the realm of the ordinary. And that is our job. That's why you have 6 kids, in the hope that one of them will be able to do that.
Oh, 6 kids, 15 grandchildren, and 3
Oh my God,
children.
that's amazing.
So we've got to get one of them right, at least, right? Howard, stand by, old friend. You and I have to take our break. This is the 3rd break for this hour. But still, coming up in hour number 2, Howard remains with us. And we have so much more to talk about. Howard Bloom is his name. His website is howardbloom.net. And we're talking about his new book entitled The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone on the X Zone Broadcast Network. And, of course, streaming on Classic 1220 CFAJ AM right here in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Some days I walk, some days I crawl, some days I can't feel much at all. My body's a maze that I try to read. Every step forward, a silent need. But I won't let this break who I is. To the echoing halls, we seek the unknown where mystery calls. On the X Zone.
And welcome back to everyone. Howard Bloom is our special guest, www.howardbloom.net. It must have been such an amazing thrill to have worked with somebody like Michael Jackson. And I know for a fact he is missed in this world. And he gave so much to so many. He gave himself in everything he did. And he didn't deserve the rap that he got from his skeptics and those people who were just so envious of him. I'm glad you were there for him, though, Howard.
Well, I loved him. You know, I mean, he represented everything that I aspired to represent. He had courage. The first rule of science is the truth at any price, including the price of your life. He put his life on the line for people, not just for people, for his kids. I got a call one day at 4:00 in the afternoon saying Michael is canceling his tour. You are the only one he will listen to. I mean, that's an amazing statement in itself. You are the only one he will listen to. You've got to be out here by 11:00 tonight to meet with the Jacksons. So I flew out to LA, and at 11:00 I met with them. They were rehearsing in a huge, one of these giant aircraft hangar-sized buildings on a studio lot. They had the biggest stage anyone had ever seen, 150 feet. The biggest stage I'd worked with up until then had been 80 feet, and it was ZZ Top bringing Texas to the world. This was almost twice that size. And when they were finished rehearsing, we went to a little trailer. You have these big vehicles that inside them are dressing rooms. So we went into this wheeled dressing room, and all the Jacksons sat over on one banquette on the far side from the door. Michael took the throne, the seat that was right next to the door, and I took the seat at Michael's left-hand side. And Michael explained to me why he was canceling the tour. I'd been out there 4 weeks earlier to do a press conference when his brother Jackie had a bone splint in his knee.
Yeah.
And they had removed it with something new, laparoscopic surgery. So I arranged the press conference for the people in the hospital to explain what they had done to Jackie. It was a month later, and Michael explained that Jackie was not getting better as fast as the doctors had said. And he said, look, Jackie is the best choreographer and the best dancer I've ever seen. Now think about that statement. Michael had studied every major dancer there was, and he had taken bits and pieces of what they had done for himself. So he was an expert on dance. So for him to say that Jackie was the best dancer he'd ever seen was a remarkable statement. And he tried to explain that because he had this quality of awe, wonder, and surprise all of the time, he owed that to his audience. And when he was saying that, I had the only visual vision I can ever remember having. And I saw Michael's ribs as golden gates, and I saw them opening, and I saw 10,000 kids inside those gates, the kids that Michael would do anything to protect and to wonder, awe, and amaze. Because wonder, awe, and amazement is one of those rare human experiences that is, we don't even try to describe it. It is sublime. It is transcendent. It brings us in touch with something higher than ourselves.
Why are there people like Michael in this world? And then there is the exact opposite.
Well,
I can
the
only-
president of the United States is the exact opposite. He's a killer of
you know
joy.
what? I was going to say that. I really
Yeah.
was. And then I figured, it's too early to get going on that. And you know, I don't know how many times I need to apologize to you, my friend, because you were right and I was so wrong. I remember the days when I would defend President Trump, and
I
now
know.
it's, oh my God, was I ever wrong?
He's there's a word, killjoy. We don't use it in spoken English very often, but it means killing joy. Now think of that. Joy is this amazing window to the infinite. We are privileged to have it. Some lives go by without ever
Mhm.
experiencing at all. It is precious beyond belief. Donald Trump kills others' joys. Why? Because he's cruel, because he wants pain. The more pain he can inflict on others, the more power he thinks that represents. However, he's a coward, and he really won't stand up to Vladimir Putin, who he admires, to Xi Jinping, who he admires. He wants to be one of the boys with these two. And what do these guys do? They make life so dreary that Moscow has had the highest suicide rate of any capital in the world, I believe, for a long, long time. Um, they make life so miserable that a friend, I was talking to a friend for an hour today about his history because he grew up under Mao and he managed to escape and come to the United States. And he went back to China 3 times to try to start a revolution of some kind, to try to free people from the Maoist way of doing things,
Mhm.
which killed something like 58 million people. Um, and he couldn't succeed. But to him, the difficulty with the Chinese is they need something like the Ten Commandments that says you have to be honest and you have to be attentive to the needs of your neighbor. And he said there's none of that in China. The old Chinese culture, the 5,000-year-old Chinese culture, pits people against each other. And one-upping another person, even at the other person's expense, in China is considered just the way you do things. And he feels that in the West, with the Ten Commandments, there's trust. But the question is, do people in China have joy? Do people under Donald Trump's would-be dictatorship, military dictatorship with armed men, I mean, masks in the streets of every major city, would they have the capacity for joy anymore?
I don't think so.
No, and Michael gave me a standard of joy that I was so, if I'd never met Michael, I would never have been able to conceive of it. Never. So I've been lucky to be able to talk to people like Elon Musk. And even though he's done some savagely awful things because he's been in Trump's orbit, I've been lucky to spend a lot to really get Michael in my bones. I was so fortunate to be able to have that experience and to be able to hang around and do projects with Buzz Aldrin and people like that, because these are the people who punched open the envelope.
How about
And
Billy Joel? You also were a very good friend of Billy Joel's.
he was my client
Yeah. What was
because
he like? Did he punch through the envelope?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I used to think, look, when I grew up, I had a book on my brown shag rug that was brown and blended in, unless you stumbled over it. And it was a book of modern poetry. And so when I first started listening, remember, I didn't listen to popular music until I started my field work in it. And then I became accustomed to the lyrics of Paul Simon
yeah.
and the lyrics of Billy Joel. And I thought the two people who are going to make it into the next anthology of modern poetry are Billy Joel and Paul Simon. And because Billy's lyrics had texture, they had depth, they were fascinating. And so was the music. But that was the music of Billy Joel's period with his first wife, Elaine. And I believe it was Elaine. Anyway, she became his manager. And they obviously had a very tempestuous relationship. And all the fire and anger showed up in Billy Joel's songs. And it made those songs like power saws. Emotionally, they just cut through to your spirit. And then the marriage broke up. And that primal power in Billy's music receded. Now, it didn't mean he lost touch with his audience, because when he got together with Christy Brinkley, and I was vaguely involved in that, when he got together with Christy Brinkley, look, one day I hadn't seen Billy for a long time, and I wanted to stay in touch. So I asked him if we could just get together and hang out, which is something I don't know how to do, but I was going to try it. So I went over to the hotel on Central Park, where he had a suite, an apartment, basically. And I waited for him down by the elevators. And when he came out of the elevator, he had this notebook in his hands. And remember the notebook your mother bought you when you were going to first grade?
Yes.
And it had this black and white marbling on the cover.
Yes.
It was one of those notebooks. Now, Billy had previously told me that writing songs for him was one of the hardest things in the world. And he used to pace around his piano, a grand piano, and he called the piano the beast with 88 teeth. Well, now he had this notebook in his hand, and we sat down for breakfast outdoors. And it was one of those days, the first day of spring, when women take off their coats and start walking down the streets with bare arms. And you have no idea of how hungry men get during the winter to see those bare arms.
Yeah, it's the bear that comes out of the cave after the hibernation.
Yes. So we were looking at these women and astonished. And Billy said, look, I have to tell you a story. You know how hard it is for me to write lyrics. Well, last night I met a woman, and you know how when I grew up on Long Island, we didn't consider women to be humans. We considered them to be some other alien species. And certainly they couldn't think, and they couldn't talk like us. And he said, I met a woman last night who I could talk to the way I talk to a man. She was intelligent. And we sat there until 3 a.m. And I came home. And when I came home, I filled this notebook with lyrics, 12 songs in 2 hours for a man who normally took 3 months to write a song.
Unreal.
And he shoved the notebook across the table to me, and I opened it, and there were the lyrics to songs like Uptown Girl. Now, Uptown Girl is one of the most empty songs I've ever heard.
Howard, we're going to have to take a break here. Please stand by, and thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and spending 2 hours with us. I always enjoy talking to you, both on air and off, and congratulations on yet another great book. And of course, Exonation, we're talking about The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. I'm Rob McConnell. My guest is Howard Bloom. His website is www.howardbloom.net. And we'll both be back after this very short break with some station work right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Don't go away.
Where mystery calls on the X-Zone Radio, where the truth finds a way through the stories of ghosts that wander and sway, inviting the seekers, the wise and the brave. Join